We need to build Ghostface from the very self-aware Scream series in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, taking the build all the way from level 1 to level 20. Then we need to cover exactly how you can play this character, because there's two very special ways to pull it off very effectively. So let's start with the race. You are a very straightforward human, so we're going to take human, but we're going to get some flexibility by going human variant. This grants us a feat right at first level, and since you are a very famous slasher villain, I was going to take slasher, but you pretty much always use a knife, which does piercing damage. So we're going to take the feat Piercer. This gives us a +1 bonus to our strength or dexterity, but we're going to choose dexterity. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with an attack that deals piercing damage, you can re-roll one of the attack's damage dice. And finally, when you score a critical hit that deals piercing damage, you can roll one additional die when determining the extra piercing damage the target takes. Also, when you choose to be a human variant, you get to choose one skill. So to help sneak up on your targets, we're going to go with stealth. When it comes to a background, you're constantly wearing a mask, so we're going to choose the background faceless. This comes from Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus and gives us skill proficiency in Deception and Intimidation. It also gives us tool proficiency with a disguise kit, so you can wear that ghost face mask. And there's even a feature called Faceless Persona, which already has an option for a persona that's listed as a disguise with monstrous characteristics meant to inspire fear. And there's another very key feature called dual personalities, stating that most of your fellow adventurers and the world know you as your persona. So you can really lean into this, because in the Scream series, it's always a mystery as to who's really under that ghost face mask. Then when it comes to our stats, we need to focus on our abilities, and we need plenty of stealth, as well as the ability to definitely deceive everyone around you to not let them know that you're secretly Ghostface. So we're going to max out our dexterity, bringing it to 15, then get another +1 from our racial bonus, bringing it to 16, and then we get another +1 on top of that from choosing the Piercer feat. Then we're going to take our Constitution, put as many points into it as we can, bringing it to 15, because in pretty much every Scream movie, you take a hell of a beating, but somehow don't even show up with a bruise in the next scene. Then we're going to bring our Wisdom up to a respectable 12, just to help the always necessary perception. And then finally, we're going to take the last of our points, put it into Charisma, bringing it to 13, and then get another +1 from our racial bonus, bringing it to 14. That leaves our Strength and Intelligence dumped down to 8, but we're not really going to focus on those anyways. Now we focus on stealth, we need to be using a knife, which is a finesse weapon, and both of those definitely lean into going with a rogue. When you take your first level of rogue, you get proficiency in light armor, as well as all the weapons we're going to need, which is a knife. You get access to thieves tools, so you can pick plenty of locks. You get saving throws in dexterity and intelligence. Then you get to choose 4 skills. We're going to take athletic, so you have something to deal with any physical challenges, perception, so you are better aware of your surroundings, sleight of hand to deal with better lock picking, and then we'll throw in persuasion, just in case we're not well covered enough with deception. Then the first feature you get when you become a rogue is expertise. This allows you to double your proficiency bonus in 2 skills of your choice. So we're going to boost up our stealth and our deception, because those are the most key skills that we need if we want to be Ghostface and we want to keep it a secret. Then one of the most notable features of being a rogue, you also get a first level called Sneak Attack. So once per turn, you can deal extra damage, but there's a few requirements. You have to either have advantage on your attack roll, or there has to be an enemy of your enemy within 5 feet of them. But since you usually just pop out, scaring them and stabbing at the same time, usually you'll be relying on stealth to provide that advantage. The other requirement is that you're using a ranged or finesse weapon, and since you usually use a knife, that's completely covered. The amount of extra damage goes up as you level up in rogue. Right now it's only an extra 1d6, but we're definitely going to be boosting that up more. Then finally, the last feature you get at first level is Thieves' Cant, which is just a special way of talking that only other rogues can understand, which we can kind of pretend is something related to that voice modulator. Then at second level of rogue, you get Cunning Action, allowing you to use your bonus action to dash, disengage, or hide. And that's super useful, because if you pop out, try to strike, and then you miss, you can quickly duck away and hide the second that your target isn't looking, which I always found somewhat suspicious as to how often that happens in the Scream series. Then at third level of rogue, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 1d6 to 2d6, and you get to choose a roguish archetype, otherwise known as a subclass. And every possible feature that we need definitely leans into going with an assassin. This gives us bonus proficiencies in a disguise kit and a poisoner's kit. Even though we already had a disguise kit, a poisoner's kit can come in handy. Additionally, when you choose this subclass, you get Assassinate. So you automatically have advantage on any attack rolls against a creature that hasn't taken its turn in combat yet. In addition, Any hit you score against a creature that's surprised is automatically a critical hit, which is very convenient because that happens to synergize with our Piercer feat, so we'll be able to roll that one additional damage dice even more often. Then at 4th level of Rogue, you get an ability score improvement, so we're going to focus on our dexterity, putting 1 point into it, bringing it to 18, because that helps everything being a rogue, and then we're going to put 1 more point into our constitution, just so we can take a few more hits. Then at 5th level of Rogue, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 2d6 to 3d6, and you get the feature Uncanny Dodge. So now if somebody fights back and tries to hit you, you can reduce the damage using your reaction to cut that damage in half. Then at 6th level of Rogue, you get expertise in 2 more skills. And since we don't have enough strength to help out our athletics checks, let's go ahead and boost that up with our expertise, and then follow that up with perception, just because it's always helpful to have a high perception. Then at 7th level of Rogue, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 3d6 to 4d6, and you get access to evasion. So if you have to make any sort of dexterity saving throw to reduce damage, at most you're only ever going to take half damage. And if you succeed on the dex save, you take 0 damage. Then at 8th level of Rogue, you get another ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and max out that dexterity, bringing it to 20. Then at 9th level of Rogue, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 4d6 to 5d6, and you get another feature from being an assassin, Infiltration Expertise. And this is going to really help with hiding your identity, because Infiltration Expertise makes it so you unfailingly create false identities for yourself. You have to spend a full week and some money to establish the history, profession, and affiliations for the identity, but you can always use that new identity as a disguise. And this is useful depending on the Scream movie, because I know in Scream 2 there was a full-blown hidden identity of the villain who constantly pops up, even though the main characters totally should have known who they were. But no matter what, this feature is gonna help your whole dual identity thing. Then at 10th level of Rogue, you get another ability score improvement, and we really need to focus on that charisma. So we'll throw 2 points into that, bringing it up to 16. Then at 11th level of Rogue, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 5d6 to 6d6, and you get one of the most powerful abilities that rogues have: reliable talent. So now any skill that you have proficiency in, you can't roll less than a 10. You can't even get a critical failure on it. And having a 10 as your skill minimum is pretty darn powerful. That means all of those deception checks that you have to hide your identity are a minimum of 10 plus twice your proficiency bonus, which at this level will be a +4, so doubling that, bringing it to a +8, but your proficiency bonus goes all the way up to a +6, meaning that you're going to have a +12, even before you factor in your charisma. So that means at max level, you can't roll less than a 22 plus your charisma for any deception check, which is almost unbeatable. And then at 12th level of Rogue, you get another ability score improvement. So we'll throw 2 more points into that charisma, bringing it to 18. Then at 13th level of Rogue, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 6d6 to 7d6, and you get another feature from being an assassin, and that's Imposter. And this is going to be the absolute best way to use your voice modulator, because by the time you hit the 3rd Scream movie, that voice modulator doesn't just make you sound creepy. It actually imitates other people's voices, and that's what this feature does. It grants you the ability to unerringly mimic another person's speech, or their writing and behavior, even granting you advantage on any deception check to use this ability. And since you already have expertise and reliable talent, that is just absolutely ridiculous. Then at 14th level of Rogue, you get Blind Sense, so you're aware of the location of any hidden or invisible creature within 10 feet of you. So that means nobody can hide from you. Then at 15th level of Rogue, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 7d6 to 8d6, and you get Slippery Mind, giving you proficiency in Wisdom saving throw, which, considering the majority of the Scream villains, that would be pretty darn useful because they're not always wise.
Did you really call the police?
You bet your sorry ass I did.
My mom and dad are gonna be so mad.
Then at 16th level of Rogue, you get another ability score improvement. So we're finally going to max out our charisma. Then at 17th level of Rogue, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 8d6 to 9d6, and you get another feature from being an assassin, Death Strike. You become the master of instant death. So when you attack and hit a creature that is surprised, it must make a Constitution saving throw. And on a failed save, your attack's damage is doubled, but you have to factor in everything with this, because that automatically triggers your assassinate ability as well. Because thanks to assassinate, surprising somebody is automatically a critical hit, and death strike means that damage is doubled, which will calculate all that damage in just a second because it's going to go up a little more. But first, at 18th level of Rogue, you get the feature Elusive, which means that nobody can ever get the upper hand against you, and no attack roll against you is ever going to have advantage as long as you're at least conscious. And then at 19th level of Rogue, you get another ability score improvement, so we're going to take the feat Tough, because that's going to give you the most bang for your buck, giving you an extra 2 hit points of health per level of this overall build. And finally, your sneak attack damage upgrades from 96 to 10d6. So it's time to calculate some damage. If you pop out and surprise your enemy, you're automatically going to crit, thanks to your assassin ability, Assassinate, and then you get to double the attack's damage on top of the crit, thanks to the assassin ability, Death Strike. So that means even though you're attacking with a knife, which would be a dagger and only do a d4 of damage, you still get to add all that sneak attack damage. So we have a 1d4 for the knife, another 1d4 for that critting, a +5 thanks to our dexterity modifier, and then we get 10d6 from our sneak attack damage. Then we get to double that for another 10d6 thanks to the crit, and because we crit, we get to activate our Piercer feat, which allows us to add 1 more damage die. But it doesn't say that it has to be the weapon's damage. It just says that it has to be additional piercing damage. And your sneak attack damage automatically deals the same type of damage as the weapon that you're using. So we can add a d6 instead of a d4, bringing us to a total of 2d4 plus 5 for the dexterity and 21d6, which would bring us to an average of 95 damage. But I like to theorize with the max numbers, which if we rolled all maximums on those dice, we would get 139 damage in a single stab. But that's before we even factor in Death Strike, because then we get to double it, which would bring us to 190 damage with one single stab of the knife, or if we rolled all maximums, we get 278 damage in a single strike. And just in case that doesn't help enough, we still haven't hit our 20th level of Rogue, which gives us the feature Stroke of Luck. So if you just so happen to miss with that surprise attack, which is so valuable to have, Stroke of Luck makes it so your attack will automatically hit. You can only use it once per short or long rest, but it's so valuable to use that first surprise attack that this is really going to come in handy. Alternatively, you could use this to treat any ability check as a just straight up critical success, but considering you already have reliable talent, it's better to use this on an attack roll. That brings you all the way to 20th level, but there's a very important way that you're going to want to play this, and you can do it in 2 different ways. First off, talk to your dungeon master. Tell them your plan of how you want to pull this off, because it can help shape the overall adventure. Your group could be just adventuring along and people are mysteriously being taken out throughout the villages and cities that you're going through, turning it into a mystery thriller on top of your normal adventure. You can still play as a rogue, but the rest of your party is going to have no idea that you're secretly Ghostface. And if your dungeon master is okay with it, you can even use a different rogue subclass, hiding the fact that you're secretly an assassin. And you can turn this into a cool murder mystery type thing, eventually circling back to the party itself. And it can turn into a really cool adventure as long as your dungeon master is okay with it. But the other way that you can play this and make it even more interesting is by going even closer to what the Scream movies do. And not to spoil anything for a series of movies that's been out since the 90s, but there's always 2 ghost faces. So talk to your dungeon master and get another player to do the same thing. That way you can always back each other up and divert any suspicions against each other. The party's going to have so much trouble trying to figure out who's really behind everything until you get to the finale, which is going to be the big reveal. I think this would be so much fun to play in a D&D campaign, especially as all the players start getting suspicious of who's really behind what's going on. Let me know what you think about this build in the comments down below, whether you'd play it or if there's any changes you would make to make it even more interesting. I'd love to hear about it. If you want access to the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below. Just like all of these awesome people, especially my player character patrons, CGC, 2014, Afstorm, Godzilla Khan, Elisa Martinez, Anthony McDonald, Panda Milkshake, Alistar Nix, Ted Z, Andrew Nobles, Karkat Kitsune, Zed13, Viral Neravar, Daniel Galvin, The Dino 21, Chris Moke, and Benjamin. Then of course there's the patrons I play D&D with, Shane Gilroy, Conman CX, Cyberciety, Talon Starkey, Braden Aldrin, Partridge, Eric, Wade, Salvador, Devin Happy, and Kilo Kilo. Then going above and beyond anything I ever imagined is my god tier level patron GameSteak, and he was especially hoping for this build, so I wanted to make sure I got it out. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session, especially if you want to turn that D&D session into a murder mystery thriller like the Scream movies and play as Ghostface in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.